In this lesson, we're going to be looking at Cocoapods. This video is not important. However, as a good developer, you should always use Cocoapods in your project. What does Cocoapods do? So, well, let's read it from here. If you go to cocoapods.org, it says here that Cocoapods is a dependency manager for Swift and Objective-C Cocoa projects. It has over 37,000 libraries and is used in over 2.6 million apps. You should always use Cocoapods, and I'll tell you the reason. Let's say that you have 5 SDKs in your project. You have one for Facebook, one for maybe push notification, one for analytics, one for Parse, one for, say, cloud storage, maybe AWS. Okay. And if you manually install those libraries, so like we did previously where we dragged and dropped the SDK from Parse to the project, that means every time that there is an update, the SDK, there's no way to know. You will not know there's an update. Secondly, if you have to update your libraries, maybe 3 months after, you need to go look for those links, go back to the website, delete the old SDK and drag new ones into it. It can be really messy, but with Cocoapods, it has a lot of libraries on it. With one line of code, you can update. So what I'll show you now is I'm going to show you how to set up. I'm going to go back to my desktop. We're going to delete the one that we created previously, and I'll show you how to make a new one. So let's create a new Xcode project. So let's say create new project, single view. Next, we're going to call it basic Twitter again. But this time, remember, because it's new, it's not going to have any library inside of it. I'm going to save it to the desktop, so we guarantee that we don't have. Remember, previously we have to link some frameworks. We have to link the Audio Toolbox, System Configuration, C++ library, and the SQLite. We don't need to do that if we're using the Cocoapods, because it's going to be done automatically, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to close it out. It's even recommended to actually quit Xcode when you're setting it up, but let me just show you something. First of all, before I show you that, let's install Cocoapods. In order to install Cocoapods, it says here to install it, you just need to do this. So let's copy. We're going to copy the one from where it says sudo. Don't copy this $, just the one that says sudo gem install Cocoapods. You can simply just type that. We go back to our terminal. I'm going to open a new window. I don't want to close the one for my dashboard. Again, I'm going to paste it on the terminal and press enter. It's going to ask for password, so provide your password. It might take some time while it's still checking stuff in the background. Don't worry, it is working. And within few minutes, if you already have one on your system, like I already do, then it's gonna say one gem installed. So once it's installed, what's the next step? The next step will be to now create something called pod file. So we need to add a pod file to our project. So let me show you how to do that. I will open my Finder here. You can see that our basic Twitter app only have 2 things inside that folder. A folder called basic Twitter, and then the Xcode .xcode project, okay, which is the Xcode project. Now let me bring the terminal on the side. In order to add the pod file that we need to now type in the command line pod init. But before we initialize the pod file, we need to navigate to this directory, because you need to create the pod file inside of the directory. So the directory is on this on the desktop. So let's change directory. We say cd change directory to desktop. Now if we use ls, we have the past dashboard config file and the basic Twitter. Okay, so now let's cd into the basic Twitter. We need to be inside of the directory. Okay, now if we say ls, you can see this 2 files there is also on here. Okay, now we need to initialize the pod file. It's a pod init. That's all you need to type, and watch what happen. It will initialize a file for us, pod file. So now click on this pod file. and you can see that it says on comment to the next line to define a global platform for your project. So let's say we want to run this for minimum of iOS 9.0. We specify, so we need to remove this comment line, and also that's all we need to do. Let's go back to the browser. If you want to install something called AF networking, you need to say pod AF networking. If you want to install or stack view, you have to say pod or stack view. So now here, what we want to do is we want to install Parse. So if you go to this URL, which is also going to be provided, you can see that all the command that we need to install Parse is to say pod Parse. Pod Parse. So let me do that. Can I copy this code? I think it's not allowing me to copy it. I'm not sure what's wrong with the website. Let's wait for it to refresh. Okay, yeah, I can copy it. So I'm going to copy this line to install through Cocoapods. I'm going to go back to my text edit, and here under the between the target do to end, you need to paste anything you want to install. So if you want to install, for example, Firebase, you have to say pod Firebase. If you want to install Facebook, pod Facebook. That's one line of code to install any library that you want. It's very cool. Before I realized about what I'm missing not using Cocoapods, I used to hunt around for SDKs and look for the websites. Some of them they hide. Some SDKs like One Signal, which I might be using this app to send push notification, they don't encourage you to use the SDK to download it. They want you to use Cocoapods. So you need to look around and click around to find the SDK to download. But now I don't use anything other than Cocoapods if it's available. So once you put the pod Parse, again, remember that if you have a bendy quote, make sure that you change it. Just copy one of these. It has to be straight like that one. Okay, I'm going to save this file. Once I save it, I can close it. So I'm going to close the file and then go back to just to install it, because it says here Cocoapods. Here it says once you add your pod, then you have to say pod install. So let's go back to terminal, and now we can say pod install. And as you can see, it's saying installing both and installing Parse 1.14.2. That's all we need. It's done. It's done. Now let's go back to, let's open our Finder again. Finder, you can see that we have so many things now. Here we have the podfile.log, which is something that you should look into. We have all our pods. You see we have the bolts and we have the Parse. Okay. And very important, very important, you can see here it said make sure to always open the Xcode workspace instead of the project file. So normally when we open our Xcode project, we always use the .xcode proj, but don't do that. Once you use a pod to Cocoapods to install your pod files, you should always use the workspace to open. So now I click on the workspace to open the project, and we can open our project, the basic tutor, and then if we go to the pods, you can see that it's installed our library for us. If we look inside the frameworks, not this framework, this particular framework, iOS, you can see that it's added all the things that we need. But don't worry about that, you don't have to look into them. You can close it. Let's try and build and see if we have a successful build. If we don't, it might be due to other things such as like iOS 11 conflicting with Parse code. But yeah, we have a successful build. And let me see if there's anything else I need to mention in terms of pod. Okay, yeah, let me quickly show you. Let's go to, so let's say 6 months you want to check if any of your library is require an update. You can just say pod outdated, and it's going to go through your all your libraries to see if any one of them needs an update. It's because I'm setting this up brand new on this machine, I think that's why it's taking all of this time. Usually it will just tell me which library is old. Okay, so after analyzing the dependency, you say this following pod updates are available. So you can see that the last part that was downloaded was 1.14.2. Now it's available 1.15.3. So we can now just say pod update. Look, so this is exactly what I was telling you previously. You can see now that we didn't have to go to the website to hunt down the SDK and then download it and drag it back into our file. You can just, with one line of code, update all your pods. There you go. So it's now saying installing Parse 1.1 was this value. So everything is fine. Let's launch the project again and build Command B to see if everything is fine. Hopefully. Yep, build succeeded. Okay. So I hope you've learned something new. Like I said, this is not important. It's not part of the importance of the course, but it's always good to know. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.